Unfortunately, my voice is going already. Welcome to Hyperion Entertainment, Aeon and AQ. The premier, the only manufacturers of Amiga hardware for Amiga OS. Today, obviously, we're here to talk about the new Amiga One X1000. I know there's a lot of questions about it. What we've got today is the development hardware team from various. We've got Hyperion Entertainment, we've got the two software engineers, the three brothers. My business partner's here somewhere, but he's probably in the bar. And I'm here, and I'm Trevor Dickinson. So welcome to the show. The Amiga One X1000 was conceived about over 2 years ago by Ben Holmes, actually. And Ben approached me and said, how about making a new computer for OS 4? I said, well, that sounds like a good idea. I collect Amiga computers. If anyone knows me, I've got a lot. I probably have about 150 computers in my basement, and about 50 of them are Amiga, all varieties. So as you can see, I'm very sensible, stable, well-mannered person. So when he said, how about a new Amiga, I said, that would be great. I would love to have a new Amiga computer. So it's a lucky meeting, because I was actually in Belgium with Michael Batelan of Planter, who I was doing some business with, and he had a meeting that day with Ben and said, how about going out for a beer? And that was the day that Amiga Inc. just issued the lawsuit on the boys. So Ben said, oh, it's a great day, I've got this lawsuit, and I've got to meet you as well. Anyway, long story, Ben started looking at possible hardware partners. He actually found a CPU partner first. No more about the CPU, it's not going to be said today. And they recommended a few companies. And it soon became apparent that Varisys would be a better fit for us. They were successful, they had a good track record, they've been in business a little while. They were also close by, they were in Europe. When we met them, they had a good fit, good personality. They weren't a massive company who was just override us. There was someone who could be a real partner, form a real partnership. That's for Amiga World, folks. About just over 2 years ago, they started work on the project. Even before Aeon was formed, even before we raised any money, before we did anything to raise the hardware. And about 2 years ago, 18 months ago, 2 years ago starting the work, 18 months ago they started the project, and all the physical stuff started about just over 18 months ago. So they've been working on the hardware for 18 months. They actually took that time to lay out the boards, do all the designs, lay out the boards, do the testing. The testing was very extensive. They've got a fantastic track record of developing supplying products, and they've put out a quality product. So they wouldn't give it to us until they were happy that it worked. So at the end of last year, the first board went to the Freedom Brothers, and they've had it in their hands since last year. Just had to tease the website later, which you all loved, didn't you? I thought it was fun. Nemo motherboards have also now gone to the other hardware software developers and device providers. And I'd like to say this has been running now for 6 months. It's been running for 6 months, it has, booting OS 4. Only in the last couple of days, it's actually booted properly off the hard drive. So even this morning, I wasn't sure it was going to work, because the Freedom Brothers turned up with a board, with the hardware, with a hard disk drive, booted it up, and goodness it worked. So it does work. It's still running a lot of debug software, so it's not as smooth as it should be. But you know Hyperion, you know they deliver, you know they got the software working just right. And that's why they're doing the beta test program as well. That's why beta testers to make sure we don't have Amiga One XE SE problem. We want Amiga One X1000 to go out, the machine works, high quality, good product, and brings the Amiga back to where it should be. 25 years after the original Amiga was launched, we have a product which last week said, yes, it's an Amiga, yes, it's good quality, yes, it works. It may not be as groundbreaking as the original Amiga, but for us enthusiasts, me in particular, it's definitely an Amiga computer. So I'd like to say thank you for coming. We have Varisis here, the managing director and the technical director of Varisis, one gentleman. We have director of technology, and also managing partner of Hyperion Entertainment, Ben Holmes. In his spare time, as a lawyer, that sounds terrible. He's actually intellectual property. That's his real job. My other business partner, Tony Moore, is around here somewhere, but I think he's probably in the bar. The Frieden brothers are here somewhere, hiding somewhere. The two of the A-Cube managing partners are here. Enrico and Max. You don't want to buy this today, but you can always buy it at SAM. They make excellent products, and they're showing their 460, which is their new SAM with a 1 gigahertz processor. So it's getting up there, and I would say it brings the SAM with modern hardware better than the Pegasus. To date, the Pegasus was put the better machine, I would say, with the SAM with modern hardware and modern technology. Yeah? So, if you've got any questions, now's the time to ask them. We'll be around all afternoon until you go to see us. We'll answer questions now, anyone you want to ask.
With the
Xmos?
Yeah.
I'm glad you asked that. This man will tell you all about Xmos.
The Xmos chip is, I think, been widely misunderstood. What Xmos is now is a new class of programmable device. It's, to my mind, halfway between an FPGA and a very fast microcontroller. There are a couple of things in it that are very unusual. It does threading at the hardware level in a much more fine-grained way than traditional CPUs. It actually swaps between its hardware threads every instruction clock. So you've got at least 4 hardware threads, each running at an effective rate of 125 MHz. So compared with like an old 8-bit micro, that's serious performance. But the light of that, they've very tightly coupled the processor to the IOs in a way that I've not seen before. If you imagine getting an old 8-bit micro, bit banging, some simple protocol like say a serial, well, that's a fairly straightforward problem to solve. But then imagine you were trying to make it talk to an Ethernet 5 or a USB 2 file. You'd say to yourself, well, I need this thing to run at 100 megahertz, and I need those programmable I/O lines, those GPIOs, really tightly coupled. I'd need to know that I could react to an interrupt within a block or two. And these are the things that the Xmos chip does. Essentially, it lets you develop programmable logic in C. So you don't have to be a VHDL expert, and the base of users that can get into what I would call hardware design is now 100 times bigger. If you're a good C programmer, if you understand low-level C, you can work with the Xmos chip. On this board, it does something that I think is very important. So many areas of the design, you breathe on them and they won't work. DDR2 running at 1000 megahertz. PCI Express, and all this stuff is quite hairy, and it's one of the reasons my hair is the colour that it is. But I wanted part of the design, and I argued with AE on that there should be part of the design that would be okay for people who have basic electronic skills. The fact that there's an Xmos chip on there means that you can get in and use part of that board without being an expert. You don't need a degree, maybe you've only studied electronics on a very basic level, you're a hobbyist, it's a way of getting into the hardware of the board and not getting stung and not finding it difficult to understand. I think in most cases, the Xmos chip is going to make sense to people who want to plug in a board. Perhaps 20 years ago, they would have developed their own ISA boards, which is quite a straightforward thing to do. But there are very few opportunities to do things like that with modern computer hardware. We've got PCI slots, we've got PCI Express slots, we've got USB 2. All of those things are okay for me to design around, but I spend all my time doing it. For an ordinary user who's just hacking, they're not so easy. So again, the Xmos chip is a way into the design of doing simple hardware hacking for ordinary computer users and enthusiasts. I guess the other aspect is that the Xmos chip opens the world of fine-grained parallel processing, something that Paul and I used to work with 20 years ago in terms of the Xmos transducer processor. And the Xmos chip architecture at a low level is quite a lot like a transducer. So this is another thing that I think users of this new machine could get into, and we're kind of waiting to see which way the community takes this technology. Do they use it just for hardware hacking? Do they get into the fine-grained parallel processing? So I'm waiting to see where the demand is, and we're hoping to be involved in doing some of the designs that support both those applications.
It's a random out there question, but like the idea of like adding more in the Zorro slot seems to have like 256 of these cores.
Yeah.
And would it be theoretically possible to emulate other CPUs at that level? So you can emulate like a hardware network, that's possible?
Not my area of expertise, but if you imagine having 256 loosely coupled cores, there are a lot of classes of compute problem that will map very well onto that. In my world, the kind of thing that I see being done using hardware like that is massive simulations. Actually, simulations of hardware as it happens. It's very good for that. There are certain classes of mathematical problems that break up well onto fine-grained parallel architectures. But it seems that the world is waking up to the fact that you can only go so far with instructions per clock, with modern computer architecture. We're hitting a bit of a limit. There are a couple of cores in this design. Intel have got designs with many cores, but there is a limit to this. And it seems, this is interesting for Paul and I, that we're going to end up where we personally started 20 years ago, with massive numbers of processors that are loosely coupled. And we figured that in the Amiga One, we may as well foreshadow what I think is this inevitable trend.
One more thing very quickly. I think, would it be good for something like rendering, like sort of, in the same way that sort of video
Yes,
queue does?
that is, I mean, I remember from my transputer days, that is a class of problem that works very well on fine-grained parallel architectures, graphics, that kind of thing. And that's obviously a big deal for Amiga enthusiasts.
Okay, any other questions?
How much do you think it's going to cost?
I guess that's a $64,000 question. 64,000? No. This is meant as a top-end machine, and compared to mass-produced Intel machines or x86 machines in the Far East and China, this is going to be much more expensive. Even our SAM machines, compared to x86, we're expensive. We're in a very small market, we're very specialised, we're making very small numbers compared to the hundreds of thousands of boards, millions of boards that are produced elsewhere. So they're inherently expensive. We are trying to make, I'm an enthusiast, I've said this before and I've said it several times, I would sell it break even. Right? I would just break even on it. Because to me it then prolongs the Amiga legacy, which started 25 years ago. But to be honest, we've got to make sure it retains some profit into the system so we can look at the next step. Otherwise we just end here. It doesn't really answer your question.
How much is it going to cost?
I don't know. I really don't know. Okay. It's going to be north of £1,500. Definitely. It can't be any cheaper.
Okay. And when do you hope it will be available?
Well, what we've got is we've got a revision 2. This is the revision board one you're seeing here. We have a revision 2 design, and let me tell you that. That's obviously will be wait for that to come in. That will go to beta testers. We've got a beta test program set up. We've invited people to apply to be a beta tester. It's not free, there's a payment to be a beta tester, but they will get their boards at substantially reduced price. We haven't decided the overall price yet. I've made one suggestion, no one's agreeing on it, but the price will not be expensive compared to the commercial system. But they'll be able to build their own system up with a list of recommendations for us and what components to buy. Once we're happy with those 100 boards, and that it does what it says on the tin, then we will open it for commercial. But I would hope that, we said summer 2010, it's got delayed, obviously. We'd hope the beta test boards will be out to summer 2010, and then the commercial ones will follow after that. So we obviously got to speak to our hardware partners, and obviously to Hyperion. It's not just a one-man team, this is definitely a group.
So is it before Christmas or a
Oh, well,
possibility, or?
I want to have, before Christmas, Ben, I want to have before Christmas.
That's definitely. Let's see.
He's a lawyer. Definitely a possibility.
When it's done.
Don't say when it's done. Or 2 more weeks.
The beta program, if people want to get involved in that, are there any places left on that program?
The beta test well, the good thing, the good and bad news is, the bad news we haven't sent the information out yet. The good news is, no one's been told whether they're on the beta test program yet or not. And to be eligible, you have to have we're giving priority to existing Amiga OS4 beta testers. Anyone that's been an A1 or A1 SE or Micro A1 or SAM tester, any one of those people, they'll get priority. Right? After that, it's then people with relevant background and experience that know who will actually beta test. You don't have to be a coder, you don't have to be an hardware engineer, you have to use the machine. You have to report back bugs.
So
Talk about bugs in software.
Sure. Well, so you'll approach people and invite them then, rather than...
Yeah, we've had probably 150 plus people apply to be beta testers. That includes the existing OS4 team. Now, from that, obviously the people just contact us to find out what the price was and what the CPU is, and we hopefully circumvented that by having a 2-stage process. The first process was everyone that applied was sent a reply by me saying, this is what the deal is. If you really are interested, you now have to contact Hyperion, and they will send out a beta test program package. And after that, you can join the beta test team, you can meet certain criteria. So, there's no one been approved yet. No one.
And one last question. I'm not going to try and draw you on who's providing the CPU, but can you tell me, will it ever be made public, or will it always be a secret?
No, it will be made public.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
No problem. Anybody else? Nobody else? Okay, well, thanks very much for coming, and we'll be. I know people don't ask questions at the big meeting. We're around all afternoon, and I'm here tomorrow as well. But these guys won't be. So if you've got any Xmos questions, and otherwise just come round and we do have a few little freebies to give away. There is some Amiga rock going around somewhere. If you ask nicely, you might get some Amiga rock. So, thanks very much.